Fortnite has been a competitive game for over 6 years and only 33,000 people out of billions of players have made money competing. But less than 1,000 of them can call themselves pros. But out of those couple hundred people, only a handful of them have been so good at the game that we will remember their legacy forever. That's why in this video we're going to be talking about the best pros that have quit Fortnite. This list is going to be strictly competitive placements, no content or how they branded themselves. But before we get into this video, make sure you guys subscribe because at 1,000 subscribers we're going to be doing a battle pass giveaway. I am so close to 1,000 subscribers. Once we hit it, I'll be giving away the battle pass. So if you guys want a chance at a free battle pass, make sure you guys subscribe. The first player I want to talk about is easily one of the best players of all time and easily the best of multiple seasons. And the player I'm talking about is Tfue. Tfue was in his prime before tournaments, but even with the small sample size that he does have, he still has some feats that tier 1 pros don't even have today. Tfue won Fall Skirmish week 2 and 4, winning over $70,000. Then Fall Skirmish week 6 came around, which is one of Fortnite's first international lands. Him and Cloaksy ended up beating out Nate Hill and Funkbomb, winning over $200,000 and winning Fall Skirmish. Even though he wasn't in his prime when World Cup and FNCSs came around, he still qualified for World Cup solos. He ended up winning week 3 of solo qualifiers on NAEs, guaranteeing himself at least $50,000 in the solo World Cup. Being double contested off spawn at World Cup, he ended up placing 67th, still taking home $50,000. After World Cup, Tfue ended up qualifying to Grand Finals for all 3 of the FNCSs that he played after. He came 22nd in Season X Grand Finals with Kanata and Fiber. He ended up placing 7th in Squad Grand Finals with Cloaksy, Kanata, and Fiber. Then for duos, this ended up being the last FNCS that he ever played. He finished 16th in Grand Finals with Scoped. After Chapter 2 Season 2 Duo Grand Finals, he ended up quitting the game because he fell out of love with it. That's going to be a theme throughout this whole video of people just not being able to keep up with the meta and falling out of love with the game. Tfue ended up leaving Fortnite for Call of Duty Warzone. About a year after he quit Fortnite for Call of Duty, he ended up quitting streaming overall. He was burnt out after having to stream 300 hours a month based off his Twitch contract. We didn't know if we would ever see Tfue again, but recently he decided to come back to streaming, but now he's streaming on Kick, and I think he's streaming some Fortnite, and it looks like he's enjoying it. The next player we need to talk about is one of the most underrated players of all time. This player is a 6-time FNCS champion, winning 4 of them in a row. The player I'm talking about is Arkhram. Arkhram is easily one of the best players of all time. He started off his competitive journey in 2018 by placing 2nd in Winter Royale qualifiers. This is when you had to be 16 to compete for money in Fortnite. So even though he placed 2nd in the qualifiers, he could not play Winter Royale finals. But that didn't stop him because eventually Fortnite lowered the age to compete to 13 and he ended up winning the first week of Duo World Cup qualifiers. Not only did he qualify for duos with Falconer, he ended up qualifying in solos week 9, winning the whole thing. And just to make sure that vibes were high going into World Cup, he ended up winning the last week of duo qualifiers with Falconer too. In World Cup duos, he ended up placing 5th, earning him and Falconer over $900,000. In solos, on the other hand, he couldn't keep up the pace, getting 53rd, earning $50,000. During World Cup, Fortnite announced the first ever FNCS. During the first ever FNCS, Arkhram was able to qualify for the Heat but not make it to Grand Finals. But during Squad FNCS, he ended up placing 12th in Grand Finals with Falconer, Symmetrical, and Sean. For Duo FNCS, he ended up placing 3rd in Grand Finals with Andrew. And then in Solo Invitational the same season, he ended up winning it, earning himself over $40,000. In Solo FNCS the next season, he ended up placing 2nd. But this is where the legend of Arkhram really starts to take off. In Chapter 2 Season 4, he ended up winning Trio FNCS with Rex and Epic Whale. Not only did they win Chapter 2 Season 4 FNCS, they won the next 3 Trio FNCSs straight. But unfortunately in Chapter 2 Season 8, their streak would be broken by Reet, Snacky, and Favs. But not all hope was lost. They ended up coming 2nd at FNCS and then they dropped Rex to pick up Reet and won Grand Royale. After Grand Royale, Chapter 3 would be announced, but this is where the fall-off of Arkhram really starts. In Chapter 3 Season 1 Duo FNCS, he ended up placing 15th with Epic Whale. Then in Chapter 3 Season 2 Duo FNCS, which would be his last FNCS that he ever played, he would end up placing 3rd with Epic Whale. After Chapter 3 Season 2, Arkhram would announce that he is quitting Fortnite to play Valorant. Arkhram currently plays on a team named Full House and they are ranked 48th in North America. After winning 6 FNCSs and winning over 50 different tournaments, he has earned over $800,000 playing Fortnite. Next up, we have a player that should have won World Cup if it wasn't for a visual bug in the game. He's also one of the most influential players of all time. Even though he quit so early, his tactics are still being used today. He's the best IGL of all time. Next up, we have Zayt. Zayt started off his competitive career by absolutely dominating Summer Skirmish. In the solo weeks of Summer Skirmish, he ended up placing 4th and 8th. He ended up winning week 3 of Summer Skirmish with Saf, and then he placed 3rd in both days of week 7 Summer Skirmish, taking home $50,000. He won ESL Katowice duos with Saf. Then Fortnite announced World Cup, and Zayt, being a tier 1 player at the time, knew he had to qualify. Through the first 3 weeks of World Cup qualifiers, he played pretty bad, not even qualifying for finals in the 3rd week. After 3 bad weeks in World Cup qualifiers, he knew he had to step it up, and that's exactly what he did, winning week 4 of World Cup qualifiers with Saf, qualifying to the duo World Cup. But he didn't just stop there. He came 2nd the next week for solos, qualifying for the World Cup. Then he placed 3rd in week 6 and week 10 of World Cup qualifiers, making him and Saf 4-time qualifiers for the World Cup. In World Cup duos, he ended up placing 4th where he should have won, but he died to a visual bug in the game. Either way, him and Saf took home over $1.5 million. The next day in World Cup solos, he ended up placing 36th, taking home $50,000. In the first FNCS, he ended up placing 4th with Saf and Zypha. Then in squad FNCS the next season, he ended up placing 4th again with Saf, High Sky, and Commandment. In Chapter 2 Season 2 Duo FNCS, he knew that it was time to get his, so he ended up winning the whole thing with Saf. The same season, there was also a solo invitational and he ended up placing 9th. The next season was also announced to be solos, but he ended up not making out of heats. In Chapter 2 Season 4 Trio Grand Finals, he ended up placing 4th with Saf and Stretch. After that season, he ended up announcing that he would be quitting Fortnite. But just as fast as he left, he came back. He ended up coming back just in time to play Chapter 2 Season 5 FNCS with Saf and Stretch. Even though he came back for the next FNCS, this would be his last FNCS. He ended up placing 8th in Grand Finals. After Zayt quit Fortnite, he's been pretty quiet on social media, his last post being in March of 2023. Overall, in the game of Fortnite, Zayt ended up making over $1.3 million. Next up, we have someone who hasn't been as quiet on social media after they quit. Next up, we have Benjyfishy. Benjyfishy started his competitive journey winning World Cup warm-up with Mr. Savage. And then in the first week of World Cup qualifiers, he ended up placing 3rd, qualifying to solo World Cup. And then in the next week, he ended up winning the whole thing with Mr. Savage, qualifying to Duo World Cup. In World Cup, he ended up placing 14th in duos with Mr. Savage and 25th in solos. Overall, he made over $100,000 from World Cup. After World Cup, he had one of the most dominant performances of all time with Mitro and Mongrel. In Season X, he ended up winning 3 out of the 5 FNCS weeks and 4 Cash Cups. They were easily the favorites to win the first FNCS. But in Grand Finals, they got surprise landed on and griefed by a mech, so they came 10th in Season X Grand Finals. And Squad FNCS, Benji ended up placing 2nd with Mongrel, Wolfies, and Nate. And Chapter 2 Season 2 Duo FNCS, him and Mongrel were unfortunately not able to make it out of heats. But in solos the same season, he ended up making Grand Finals, coming 56th. In solos the next season, he ended up placing 59th. But in Chapter 2 Season 4 Trio Grand Finals, he ended up placing 8th with Mr. Savage and Lechi. In Chapter 2 Season 5 Trio Grand Finals, he ended up placing 5th with Amplify and Matzo. But in Chapter 2 Season 6, he ended up playing with Amplify and Matzo again, but he was conned in his heat, not making it to Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 7, he ended up placing 5th in the UEFA Cup and 70th in Solo All-Stars. In Chapter 2 Season 7 Trio FNCS, Joe, Benji, and Shadow ended up winning the first week of FNCS, qualifying to Grand Finals. But in Grand Finals, they were not able to hold up the success that they had and placed 25th. After placing 25th in Grand Finals, he went back to his roots and picked up Mr. Savage and Andretta for FNCS. But in Chapter 2 Season 8 Grand Finals, they ended up placing 23rd but stuck together for Grand Royale. And in Grand Royale, they came 15th. But after Grand Royale, Chapter 3 was announced and Benji played the last 2 FNCSs with Mr. Savage. In Chapter 3 Season 1, he ended up placing 36th, and in Chapter 3 Season 2, he ended up placing 45th. On June 24th, 2022, Benjyfishy announced that he would be quitting competitive Fortnite to pursue Valorant. In Valorant, Benji has looked like one of the most talented prospects I've ever seen. He ended up getting picked up by Enterprise Esports and then eventually got picked up by Team Heretics. I'm really excited to see Benji play for Heretics again. Overall, Benjyfishy was one of the most talented players that the game of Fortnite has ever seen, and overall he made over $650,000. Next up, we have a World Cup winner and someone who is undeniably a top 5 player of all time. Aqua started off his competitive journey qualifying to World Cup duos in week 4 of World Cup qualifiers. Then 3 weeks later in week 7, he ended up winning the whole week qualifying for solos. In World Cup duos, he ended up winning the last 2 games, winning World Cup with Nyrox, winning $3 million. In World Cup solos, he didn't do as good as he did in duos. He got 94th, but still earned $50,000. In Fortnite's first FNCS, he ended up winning Season X Grands with Shinkin and Stompy. But in Squad FNCS, he ended up not making it out of heats. But he bounced back. In Chapter 2 Season 2 Duo Grand Finals, he ended up placing 4th with Stompy, and in Solo Invitational the same season, he ended up placing 3rd. Aqua suffers from tendonitis in his wrist, causing chronic pain where he needs to take breaks and not be able to play the game as much. In Chapter 2 Season 3, this is where he took his first break and he did not qualify to Grand Finals that season. He came back for Chapter 2 Season 4 but did not make the heats, so he ended up taking another break for his wrist pain. In Chapter 2 Season 5, he ended up missing the whole season due to his wrist pain, and in Chapter 2 Season 6, he only played the first 2 qualifiers but had to stop playing due to his wrist. But in Chapter 2 Season 7, he came back strong, trioing with Vidil and Noah Riley. They came second in the finals of the first week of qualifiers, so they auto-qualified to Grand Finals, and in Grand Finals they ended up placing 8th. In Chapter 2 Season 8, Aqua ended up placing 3rd with Festroki and CRR, but they decided to split for Grand Royale coming up, so Aqua, Festroki, and Reason decided to trio, and they ended up getting 14th in Grand Royale Grand Finals. With Chapter 3 being announced, the game mode switched to duo, so Aqua decided to do it with Noah Riley. They ended up placing 23rd in the first Grand Finals of Chapter 3. But in Chapter 3 Season 2, Aqua got back on the throne that he deserved and ended up placing 1st in Chapter 3 Season 2 Grand Finals with Vino. And that was the last FNCS that Aqua has played. He announced that he would be taking a break due to his wrist pain, but that was a year ago and I don't see him coming back. He's pretty private on Twitter, but whatever he's doing, I hope he's happy and I hope he's feeling better. The next player we're going to be talking about is one of the most unlucky players I've ever seen in esports. He got stream sniped out of qualifying for Solo World Cup. He got stream sniped out of winning Solo FNCS. He was going to qualify for the Global Championship in Copenhagen, but his spot got taken by cheaters that ended up getting disqualified at the event, so their spot didn't even end up playing. And the player I'm talking about is Volx. Volx is easily the best player OCE has ever seen. He started off his competitive journey by winning week 6 of Duo World Cup qualifiers with Parpy. In World Cup solo qualifiers, he ended up placing 2nd and 5th, but there was only one spot to qualify for the World Cup solos in OCE, which he ended up getting stream sniped out of, losing him $50,000. In World Cup duos, he ended up placing 40th, which is the best by any OCE team. In the first FNCS, he ended up placing 17th with the X2 twins. But in Squad FNCS and Chapter 2, he ended up winning the whole thing with the X2 twins and Geese. In Duo FNCS, he ended up placing 6th with Carry On. Then in Solo Invitational the same season, he ended up placing 20th. And then in the next season solos, he ended up placing 20th too. In Chapter 2 Season 4 trios, he ended up placing 11th in Grand Finals with the X2 twins. In Chapter 2 Season 5, he ended up winning the first week of qualifiers with Sorf and Sync auto-qualifying to heats. They won their heat and came 2nd in Grand Finals. Since they top 3'd Grand Finals in the season before, they ended up auto-qualifying to Chapter 2 Season 6 Grand Finals, which they placed 9th. And then in Solo All-Stars, he ended up winning the whole thing. In the same season, there was another trio FNCS, and they won the 2nd week of qualifiers auto-qualifying to Grand Finals, which they came 8th. Then in Chapter 2 Season 8, Volx, Pumpkin, and Sync came 15th. Then Fortnite announced Grand Royale, which was the biggest online tournament in Fortnite's history, so they dropped Sync and picked up Looter, and they came 4th. With Chapter 3 being announced and the game mode being duos, Volx picked up Daneth, and they came 6th in Chapter 3 Season 1 Grand Finals. In Chapter 3 Season 2, Volx picked up Looter, and they ended up winning 6 Cash Cups and winning Grand Finals. But in Chapter 3 Season 3, they couldn't keep up the pace, so they ended up placing 15th. In Chapter 4 Season 1, they ended up placing 2nd in Grand Finals. But in Chapter 4 Season 2, they ended up placing 9th. Volx knew it was time for a change, so he picked up Pumpkin and they finished 3rd in Chapter 4 Season 3 Grand Finals. After 3 FNCS wins and over 38 different tournament wins, Volx ended his career with $200,000 earned. The next player that I'm going to talk about is Stretch. Stretch started his competitive career unlike any other. He played his first FNCS with the World Cup champion Booga. Booga, Clarity, and Stretch won their heat and ended up qualifying to Grands where they came 26th. Then for squads, Booga, Stretch, and Clarity ended up picking Tfue and they came 21st in Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 2, the game mode was duos, so Booga and Stretch decided to duo and they came 5th in Grand Finals. The same season, there was Solo Invitational and Stretch came 19th in Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 3, the game mode was Solos again and he came 91st in Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 4, Stretch knew it was time for a change, so he picked up 2 of the GOATs of Fortnite, Zayt and Saf, and they ended up coming 4th in Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 5, they stuck together and ended up placing 8th. After Zayt quit the game, Saf and Stretch picked up Avery and they ended up placing 3rd in Chapter 2 Season 6 Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 7, Stretch came 4th in the UEFA Cup and 18th in Solo All-Stars. That same season, there was a trio FNCS and Saf and Stretch dropped Avery and picked up Kanata and they came 4th in Grand Finals. In Chapter 2 Season 8, Stretch dropped Saf and Kanata and picked up Scented and Commandment. This was one of my favorite trios to watch, they were so dominant. But in Grand Finals, they couldn't take it home and they ended up placing 4th. They stuck together for Grand Royale and ended up placing 6th. In Chapter 3 Season 1, the game mode was duo, so Stretch duoed with Commandment and they ended up placing 8th. But in Chapter 3 Season 2, Stretch's last FNCS, he stuck with Commandment and they ended up placing dead last in Grands because they were contested off spawn. Stretch was by far one of my favorite players of all time and it sucks to see him leave. Stretch hasn't been too active on Twitter since he quit, I just hope he's happy. In my opinion, Stretch is the best player to never win an FNCS. After winning 11 different tournaments and earning over $250,000, Stretch will go down as one of the best players to ever touch this game. The next player I'm going to be talking about is OCE legend Jynx. Jynx started his competitive journey in World Cup Qualifier Week 3 coming 2nd, but OCE only had one qualification spot, so he ended up not qualifying even though he came 2nd. But in World Cup Qualifier Week 8, he ended up winning the whole thing, but that was a week that didn't have a qualification spot, so he ended up getting nothing. But in the first FNCS, Jynx played with Fresh and Rel and they ended up placing 3rd. But in the next season, Jynx, Fresh, and Rel picked up Link and they ended up placing 2nd in Squad Grand Finals. But in Chapter 2 Season 2, Jynx picked up K-Quid, which was an underrated 13-year-old at the time, and they ended up winning the whole Duo Grand Finals. He qualified to Solo Invitational the same season, ended up placing 18th. But in Chapter 2 Season 3 Solo Grand Finals, Jynx ended up winning that too. For Chapter 2 Season 4 Trio FNCS, Jynx decided to pick up Alec and Worthy and they ended up winning the whole thing. They stuck together for Chapter 2 Season 5 Grand Finals and they ended up placing 6th. In Chapter 2 Season 6 Grand Finals, they stuck together again and placed 7th. In Chapter 2 Season 7, Jynx placed 9th in the UEFA Cup and 19th in Solo All-Stars. That same season for Trio FNCS, they placed 2nd. Jynx and Worthy decided to drop Alec for Daneth, and in Chapter 2 Season 8 Grand Finals, they came 10th. They stuck together for Grand Royale and they ended up placing 9th. For Chapter 3 Season 1, Jynx and Worthy decided to duo again and they came 5th. They stuck together in Chapter 3 Season 2 and they came 22nd in Grand Finals. Jynx decided to drop Worthy for Oreo, and in Chapter 3 Season 3 Grand Finals, they came 2nd. In Chapter 4 Season 2 Grand Finals, Jynx and Oreo came 4th. But then in Jynx's last FNCS, they stuck together one more time and he ended up placing 43rd. Jynx quit competitive Fortnite after the Chapter 4 Season 3 Last Chance Major after they came 6th and weren't able to qualify for the Global Championship in Copenhagen. After winning 3 FNCSs and 24 different events, Jynx ended his Fortnite career with over $100,000 earned. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. It took me a while to get this out for you guys, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys subscribe because we're doing a Battle Pass giveaway to 1,000 subscribers, so if you guys want a chance to get a free Battle Pass, make sure you guys subscribe. Also, make sure you guys like the video and comment if I missed anybody. But until next time, see you guys later.